welcome back to like the last and final part of this whole Q&A, and I'm really sorry if you're getting sick of this. I kind of made the excuse, like I said before, to use some of these questions for filler content while my baby is due, or maybe I have the baby at home, because there was so many questions. I think there was like 55 or 60, and so many of you were asking like good questions and deep questions and things that I felt I couldn't just lightly answer. And so I made quite a few videos. I took advantage of it, and this is the last one. Let's jump into it. What kind of books do you enjoy? Do you even have time to read? Honestly, I hardly have read. Nolan's an avid reader, and I just need to make more time for it. But if I do get into books, I tend to enjoy more self-help books or devotionals or something theological. It's usually what I tend to dive into, instead of like, I want something that improves my mind. Not so much like fiction and story, although I do enjoy those, especially if they're based on a true story. So funny how times change. My mom used to be like that, and I'm like, how boring, you know. I want to read all these exciting adventures, and I was just a bookworm when I was young, and just read and read and read and read. And to me, it was just so boring that mom would only read true stories and that type of thing. But now I'm a lot like her. I just like something inspirational or something challenging, something that will help me improve in a certain subject, but hardly read it all. When do Mennonite girls begin wearing traditional dress instead of baby or toddler clothes? This varies. Once they're a little older, I would say definitely out of the toddler stage, 3, 4, 5 years old, they start wearing more like traditional Mennonite dresses. And the same would go with boys. This isn't just girls. More your conservative Mennonite groups, the men don't wear shorts or short sleeve shirts. A lot of them would wear button down or just t-shirts without like big graphics and stuff. And so that would tend to happen to boys as well. So once they start getting a little older, I still wear shorts on Xander some, but he tends to wear more long pants and just regular t-shirts, not graphics on them much. But yeah, by the time they go to school, that's usually what they wear. For both boys and girls is more like traditional Mennonite type clothing. How do you keep your boy busy? I have 4 ages, 7 and under, and I can't seem to find enough to keep them busy or new ways for all of them to play for them to be happy all the time. I feel like I'm not quite qualified to speak on this because I just have 1 child, and if you have 4 that are 7 and under, it definitely keeps you busy. I also have a son that kind of has a bubbly personality, and I think some of his personality has to do with the way he plays by himself. So my husband and I have talked about it. We are curious with our second to see what her personality is like and how much our parenting has impacted Xander and some of the things he is and how much it's just his personality. Because I think we're going to be in for a real shock with our second. Something tells me it's going to... Everyone says your second is definitely not like your first and you have to relearn parenting all over again. One thing I did with Xander more from a young age is I tried to keep him independent. I wasn't the type of person that would just dote on him and try to just keep him entertained and play toys with him a lot. Like as soon as he cried, I wasn't trying to just always soothe him. Like I wanted him to learn how to be able to entertain himself and to figure things out on his own. Like I want to spend time with him, but I don't want him to be dependent on me as his entertainer. He still gets, you know, buggy, and I'm so bored and I don't know what to do, and I will, you know, find work for him to do, and that can be difficult. It depends where he lives. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know what to have this child do, but a big help has been he's doing homework now in preschool, and I'm doing the online lessons actually where the teacher teaches him, so that has really helped keep him occupied as well. We do live on a big area where he can go out, run and play. Sometimes I'll just make him go out and find something to do. I'm like, figure it out. If you're bored, you can't come in for whatever, 15, 20 minutes, and you have to figure something out, and that usually kind of rejuvenates him, and he soon finds something to do. Another thing I have found that really helps is if I haven't nailed this down yet on specific times, but I'm trying to be a little more scheduled, where I specifically spend a certain amount of time with him a day. Maybe not specifically, but I make sure that, you know, I'll like, hey Xander, shall we look at some books? And I'll sit down and spend time just with him. Or if he wants me to play Legos with him or something. But it's not just whenever he wants to. It's not like, oh, I'm bored, can you come play with me, whatever. And so I've found that when I actually spend time with him, maybe even get him started on something, take an interest in him, just be completely devoted to him, no distractions, not trying to get some work done, which I'm very notable for doing, trying to work and talk to him and do everything at once. But just focus on him. It makes him so much happier, and then he's willing to go and play on his own again. So I've been trying to do that more as well. That has helped. I don't really know. That's just my personal experience, and I only have 1 child. So we'll see what happens as more continue to arrive, Lord willing. How do you deal with being a wife, a mom, a homemaker, a believer, and a video creator while pregnant? Because for me, only being a wife and homemaker and believer, I find it hard to fulfill my responsibilities while being pregnant. I do struggle. Like sometimes like when you're trying to do so much, you feel like you're not doing anything well, and then it really wears on you. I especially struggle that with like my husband. I feel like sometimes he takes the brunt of the load and I'm not being the wife I need to be, and I really struggle with that. And even with my child, like that mom guilt thing. Nolan, I would say, is a big help with that. He is amazing as far as helping me out. Like I couldn't do it without him. He has been one that has encouraged me greatly with this YouTube channel. Anything photography, videography related, he's been like my biggest support and probably the one that pushed me into it. And so whenever I'm crunched for time with a video, he's very quick to like do something else. You know, maybe take care of Xander or just fend for himself for a meal and take care of Xander. Maybe we'll just bring in food from elsewhere. We try not to do it too much because obviously that's not healthy, both for family time and also for the money and just for, yeah, it's nice to have a routine. He is one of those that's not so super dependent on me always doing what is considered in my field of work or my role in our, like, because I think it's very wise to have roles. Like, he is the main breadwinner and he wants it to always be that way. He never wants us to rely on the income that I make. That way, if I just have the freedom to stop whenever I need with, we have a business that we run here from home. There's a few different things we do. And so if any time I just get too busy and have to drop that, we're not relying on that income. That's a big deal to him. He wants to make sure he's always providing for everything we need. And then anything I can do can help with saving and other things. I really enjoy doing extra. I get invigorated from being able to maybe have a little bit of a side thing going myself, helping him out with finances and stuff. I get invigorated with creating, and he knows that, and he encourages it, and he loves that I do that. And so he says, look, you're helping out in this area, you know, if you're really stressed for whatever, he's going to take care of some housework. And he's so good at that. He'll come home and just pitch in with house chores if I'm really behind or whatever. And he's done that especially so with pregnancy, because when I'm so tired, he'll just say, go up to bed and I got this. So I'm really spoiled with the husband I have. I'm blessed, I should say. I just cannot imagine. I just don't know how I ended up with him because he helps me so much. We're definitely a team. I couldn't do all of it without him. I feel like simplifying and simplifying and simplifying is something that I want to do more and more of. And it's kind of becoming a passion of mine. Like, what else can I just get out of my house that I have less to deal with, and just more space and more time and just a tidy house that feels welcoming and comforting instead of like always a constant mess. And so it's just amazing how decluttering our homes just runs into every other aspect of life. If there's not a ton of clutter to always keep after, you first off free time. Secondly, it's very easy to just quickly tidy up when there's not boatloads of stuff everywhere, which we still have boatloads of stuff, but compared to sometimes, I think it's much better. That also frees up your mind. You don't feel so anxious. It frees up other time where you can sit and just say, if you have, like for me being a video creator, and then also I just feel it just makes everybody happier and less stressed out. And it takes a long time. It's not something that just happens overnight. You just continually work at it. And I think it's something you constantly work at, is to keep clutter out of your home, because it just comes in and comes in. You also the question talked about a believer. I know that can be difficult. I know for me it can be really difficult sometimes to just always make sure I have a schedule in there for, really studying, and devotionals is something I'm really trying to grow in. Sometimes we don't have to sit down and read. We can listen to scripture while we're working. It's good to sit down and have quiet time, but our mission also is our families and our children. God understands, Jesus understands when you're just so strung out, you just have hardly any time. You pray throughout the day. Lean on him for understanding. It doesn't always mean you just have to sit down and have devotions, but it is wise to always strive for that. And sometimes when you're in this busy stage of mom life, it's just a stage you're going through. Doesn't mean you can always stretch around to all the activities going on with church and extracurricular stuff. I think it's wise we just put our families first and take care of them, because that is our mission and that is our calling in that time of life, and it will pass much quicker than we realize. And then, later you can maybe do more extra stuff like in ministry and that type of thing. So I'm going to ask, what's my favorite chapter in the Bible? I would probably say, well, at least one of my favorite books, like especially starting at the beginning, would be 1 John. There's just something about John's writings that I really like. He speaks a lot about love and walking in the light. Just often I will find myself turning to 1 John. How do you incorporate discipline into your household? Oh man, you all are just asking the deep questions, aren't you? That might need a whole other video. I'm not really sure how to answer that. I'm beginning to think you all know that when you ask a deep question, I can't really give a quick answer. I just can't, I just feel like I have to dive into it. Discipline is definitely something that I think is a journey every parent goes on. It definitely is. And it's something that we kind of learn. We've made so many mistakes into the discipline area, and all parents do, I believe. It's something that we learn, and we need wisdom from God for, and there's so many opinions on how to discipline your child, what works best, what's harmful, what isn't harmful. I think a wise approach to it, in my personal opinion, is to look at everything and kind of glean the wisdom from different techniques and combine them. I feel like a lot of people, there's just so many extremes. You have an extreme on this side, you have an extreme on this side, and each side is saying their way is the only way. And usually there's pretty big holes in all sides. And if you can just find this balanced road in the middle, I think that's maybe the route to go. Just briefly, I guess what comes to mind is relationships are key. And if we do not have a relationship there, the discipline, I don't care what type of discipline you're going to use, is going to be abuse. The thing of gentle parenting, I think there's so many wise things about it. And I think that there's so many things that I believe in with the whole gentle parenting thing. I do need to study into it a little further, so if I misrepresent it, I apologize. But I have looked into different parts of it. There's so many parts of that is so true. You need a relationship with the child. You need to be gentle with them. The way you frame your words when you speak to them is so important. It's something I'm still learning to this day. But from my knowledge, there's never really any kind of negative thing put onto the child. You know, everything you say is positive. You know, and some of them are so extreme that you would never even say no to a child, which I completely do not agree with. And so I feel like there's a trap on that side where a child just never learns about life. Life is full of things we cannot do. There's many different ways of punishment that you can use with children once they're old enough to understand. Take things away from them, make them have maybe time out. But, you know, if you research into that as well, time out has been viewed by, you know, experts or whatever to negatively affect a child. To them, it speaks that they're not worth, like the parents don't want to be with them and they're just shoving them out of their life to punish them. So there's people saying timeouts are abusive. There's people saying that a spanking would be abusive. And then there's also people saying that saying no to a child is abusive. So you have to be really careful with raising children because it's such a delicate subject. I don't really want to get into techniques and that type of thing, but I believe it is foundational that a child learns when they are very young that what mom and dad say they mean. And consistency can be really difficult, especially children. They just know exactly where that gray line is and leave you as a parent wondering, oh man, do I have to call this or not? Or like, was that outright disobedience, or was it, you know, there's so many difficult things about parenting. But as much as you can, I think you need to just be consistent. When you say no, you mean it. When you say yes, you mean it. Just make sure that the child understands you and you're not confusing. This is foundational in those first years. I think it's from around the age of 1 up to like 3 and 4 that they learn this, just the simple to obey yes and no. And I'm not talking about being this like harsh disciplinarian that everything I say, you know, you go make me a sandwich, and you know, the child might want blue instead of red and you say, no, you have to use red for your crayon. Like, give the child options, like let them be a child. I'm just talking about simple commands. If there's something that the child is in danger of, they need to learn how to obey. If they're ready to run out on the road and you holler at them, I mean, it doesn't always work. Nothing's perfect. It can happen. But if they know that, they better sit up and listen when the parents give a command. And I feel like that's becoming more and more missing. And it just bothers me, the lack of obedience sometimes in children, or just the outright defiance I see and disrespect. And I think it kind of comes from our society's mentality that you can just never say no to a child and never have anything in their life that's negative or it's going to impact them and they're going to be abused. I'm going to get flack for this, I know, but I just feel like life is not like that. Life, not everyone wins a trophy. You don't go and compete in something and everyone gets to take something home. It's not how life works. We work hard for the things that we get. We're not all winners at everything. And life isn't just going to be a bed of roses. You're going to go through hard things in life. And if a child can learn how to like control themselves and control their will and to be respectful to those that have a position above them. If I go over the speed limit, I'm getting a speeding ticket. It does not feel good. But that's my own problem because I didn't listen. Like parents, we're not our child's buddies. We're not here to be their buddies. Yes, we're their friends, but we're first off their leaders. We are the ones to show them how to maneuver through this thing called life. And life is ugly and life is tough, but life is also beautiful and we have to teach them. And I just marvel at how society is so like a child needs to make their own decision. This whole thing with gender, it just breaks my heart. But they're even starting to like teach this stuff in first grade, second grade, whatever they go to school. And you know, well, you could be either, and they confuse the child. And it's a little bit the same analogy that if you have a big airplane, someone steps on that has never even seen the inside of a cockpit, and you just take that person and say, okay, go fly these 200 passengers or however much it holds and take them safely to wherever, and however you feel like flying, just go ahead, you know, you'll figure it out. And it's sort of the same thing. They had no teaching, they had no experience, they had nothing. And we just expect them to go fly that airplane? I don't think so. Why is it any difference in a child? They come into a world, they have no idea. They're born, they're babies, they're developing, they don't understand things fully. We don't expect them to know that there's a car driving down the road and they could get hit. Just such small things, like we are there to protect them and guide them. So why in other things of life do we suddenly say, oh, they just need to know? We need to be there to direct them, not to be their friends and hope that they feel all good and warm and fuzzy about us all the time, because there will be times that will be very angry at us, but it's for their good. But kind of as a summary, the thing that I would just say is just, I think the key to so much of this is to make sure that you have a good relationship with your child. But I think it's also a good thing when we fail, when we make mistakes, we say we're sorry. I think that's key. Children are quick to forgive, and we can't just go through life and make mistakes and then think that, you know, because we're the parent, we can't apologize or something like that. Because we're just all doomed for mistakes. None of us can perfectly parent, and that's where God's grace comes in. I also believe that your compliments should far outweigh your criticisms. And I have noticed, you know, when I get uptight and when I'm stressed, and it just seems I'm just constantly, children are getting, I always say children plural, I only have one child yet. I do have two. One just hasn't made its presence known yet. When we're so stressed out, our children feed off of that, and then we tend to just constantly pick on them, and nothing they do can be right. And it just, some days are just that way. It just seems to just get into everything. But I think it's key for as much as we can to just be often affirming, complimenting, so that that far outweighs the times where it's negative and you're correcting a problem or you're correcting an action. That way they have stability, they understand, they know they're loved. And the discipline also needs to come through love, obviously, and it needs to have a system to it. They have to know what they did wrong. Like I believe that, and I have made a mistake in not doing this in the past, but let's just say something happened that was unacceptable, and you immediately punish on that because you think they should just know that they shouldn't have done that. I have made that mistake, and I don't think that's healthy. Now, some things when you definitely know that it was something they shouldn't have, but sometimes mistakes happen, and then I think it's good to just sit down and explain that this is off limits. Actions like this are not permissible, and lay out a clear guideline that if this happens again, then this consequence will happen. So that when a discipline does happen, it's not out of the blue. They know, they had the expectations, they know if they cross the line, then X, Y, and Z happens. And that gives stability to a child. It just literally does. Like, they know. It's not this random punishment or this random anger thing or this random, to me, that's where you start coming into abuse. That's when a child doesn't understand, doesn't know, and Like, abuse is when, in my opinion, abuse is very much when a child doesn't know what's going to happen next, and it's so easy to do as a parent, and being inconsistent is a form of abuse, I believe, because one time you might say one thing and then the next time you don't follow through with that, or then you might say something and then the next time you joke about it and they suddenly don't know how to read you. And so they tend to push lines, or they're uncertain, and then suddenly a person just explodes, and I told you not to do that, when then just previously you had kind of joked and laughed it off, if you understand what I mean. So there has to be consistency there. I think that's one of the hardest things as parents, at least for me, and especially those gray lines. You're like, I don't know what to do here. Like, it's so gray. Like, did the child cross the line, or didn't he, or anyway. So I guess just lots of love, lots of affirmation. Definitely hold a line, be consistent, give a child that security. Another big thing I think is when parents love each other and there's peace in the home. If even you don't do anything with your child, if the parents aren't getting along and there's just constant mayhem and fighting and anger and that type of thing, it's just going to wear down a child and they're going to act out of that. And so it's kind of, I guess, my summary of it all, what we feel, and something we're always growing in. We fail in this, but it's our goal, and it's sort of our guidelines, I should say. I guess that wraps up the whole Q&A session. So, it ended up being much longer than I ever anticipated, but I will see you all in the next video. Y'all have a blessed day. See you next time.